Call the member for Thuringowa.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to speak against the motion, and as the member for Thuringowa, I'll never apologise for advocating vigorously for my community. I will never apologise for advocating for community safety, and I will never apologise for advocating for strong laws to target those few, that small cohort, who choose to do harm in the community. Yes, I advocated strongly for the suite of youth justice reforms the government introduced, backed by the LNP, because we needed them. They are the strongest laws in the nation. The presumption against bail is at the heart of those reforms. It's aimed fairly and squarely at recidivist youth offenders. It's aimed at that small group of hardcore offenders who wish and choose to do harm to the community. I have regular interactions with the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mark Wheeler, in Townsville, and he tells me these laws are working. More people are being held to account. There's more reports in the Townsville Bulletin of these hardcore recidivist offenders being denied bail because we need community safety to be paramount. There are more serious youth offenders in custody than there was a year ago. I don't apologise for that. Those people would not be in custody if they had not done harm to the community. Their rights do not rise above the rights of innocent, law-abiding members of the community. The rights of people who break into homes, who choose to break into homes and choose to steal cars, are not above the rights of victims, and it's the victims we hear about that come through our office doors and tell about the terrifying examples of what's happened to them, or incidents. And that is why community safety is and must remain paramount. Speaker, we don't live in a perfect world. In a utopian world, no one wanted to see people locked up. I wish all young people grew up in supportive families and went on to live productive, satisfying lives. But unfortunately, a small cohort of young people choose to go down the path of recidivist youth offending. They go down that path and cause great harm to our community, and Townsville has been no stranger to that. I make no apology to the government's targeting these serious recidivist offenders with the strongest laws in the nation, because it's about community safety. It's about our community being safe. Let's be very clear about this. The presumption against bail is a key element of the government's reforms. It means more recidivist offenders are being held accountable and placed in custody for longer. One element of the reforms is a trial, recommended by the former Police Commissioner Bob Atkinson. That trial is currently underway, whereby the courts may consider the fitting of a GPS monitoring device to an offender who is 16 or 17 years of age. But the court will only make that order if it is satisfied that the offender resides with a responsible adult who will ensure the conditions of the GPS monitoring order are complied with. If the court is not so satisfied, the offender remains in custody because community safety is paramount. And that's what's happening. This is the guiding principle of government reforms, community safety. It overrides other considerations. It must come first. It is important to note that these reforms just target that small cohort of serious recidivist offenders. Police say 80 to 90% of young offenders will have only one or two interactions with police and never re-offend again. The offenders the government is targeting are the 10% of offenders who are repeat serious recidivist offenders. The small cohort is responsible for nearly half of all the crime committed by youth offenders. The government is not forgetting about the vast majority of young people whose lives can be turned around. We have co-responder teams, police and youth justice workers actively going out in the community, and engaging with young people in a bid to connect with these young people with the supports they need to live a productive life. And I'll give a shout-out to our team in Townsville, the co-responders team, and the work they are doing. But that's not all we're doing. Transition to Success, a terrific program of turning lives around and getting young people back into education, skills or training. It has over an 80% success rate. The kids that go into that court and into that program don't reoffend. 80%, that's a pretty high mark. The same with Project Booyah, of stopping kids getting into that horrible laneway that they choose to, the small cohort. And I think, yeah, I agree with the member for Cairns. Project Booyah is something that should be celebrated, and we see over 88% of those kids not reoffending and getting back into education, skills and training. In Townsville we have our on-country program, shared in Cairns and Mount Isa. Great Motive came before the Legal Affairs and Safety Community last year and actually articulated the very good work that's happening in that space. And I commend the Minister and the work that's being done there. We need to provide those supports. We have Pathways College. We have Clontarf in schools in Kerwin, in Thuringowa and Heatley, and the Stars Foundation. The work they are doing is fundamental in making sure those kids stay in get their education. I went to every single one of their graduations last year. Not one media person was there. 48 of those kids picked up employment, skills and training. These are the outcomes we want to see. There's nothing better than hearing a story, and I'll tell a story of Cloudy, a young man who was in the wrong group, reoffending. He went through Transition to Success, and he has absolutely turned his life around. I saw him working so proudly as a worker on the Townsville Stadium. And he's now a mentor to the Transition to Success Pathways program, inspiring others to do the right thing, stay out of the wrong lane and get back into education, skills or training. They are the supports that are important. But we must hold those serious youth offenders to account. We can't forget about community safety. Those serious offenders are being put before the courts. Many do remain in custody. I hope they turn their lives around. I hope they get into the Transition to Success and turn their lives around. But we must make no apologies for holding people to account. Community safety must and always come first. Thank you, Speaker.
Madam Deputy Speaker.
I call